When I showed up to the state prison, I ended up cutting hair. I've cut John Jones, Diego Sanchez, Alistar Overeem. My thoughts on Vic Blends is he's nothing, and he's also fake. Sorry guys, I'm just telling the truth. I had been locked up at that point for about 8 months. He said if you wanted to, you can escape from here. In the school in California, you have a bunch of different groups, and I gravitated towards one of the wrong groups, kind of gang related, and started hanging out with them, and lo and behold, started ditching school. I didn't sell any drugs or anything at that point in time. I was still too young. I was still doing the right thing, but still getting into mischief, shoplifting from the store, from Target. Taking Walkmans, ditching school. We ended up ditching school one day, ended up going to some girl's house that we used to ditch to. She wasn't there. And one of my buddies stole a carton of cigarettes out of her freezer. One of the other buddies stole a jewelry item out of her house. And yeah, which was kind of messed up. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting at home one night, and the police come to my dad and mom's house, to my actual home. And I'm like, oh my gosh, the police are here. Like, I'm wondering.
How old were you?
I was 14 years old.
Okay.
And so I'm just wondering, I'm like, oh my God, the police, my dad's really strict. You gotta think about that. And so the police get there to the house. They knock on the door. My dad gets up, goes and answers the door, and starts talking to him. And I don't really hear the conversation. And then my dad tells me to go ahead and get up, get your ass up here. And I got up, and that's when they said, we're going to be taking you to juvenile hall. And I was like, oh wow. So I went to juvenile hall and got to juvenile hall. The other two guys, I won't mention their name. The other two individuals that were friends of mine, they were also, when I got into the juvenile hall, I showed up to the juvenile hall and I'm like, oh, there's those two dudes. They were both there as well. And so I was like, oh, wow, we're all three in juvenile hall. Well, lo and behold, this is the first time I had ever been in jail, juvenile hall, or anything. So all of a sudden they put me in like these shoes that have Velcro straps on them. And I'm like, oh my God. Well, then the other two guys were in another holding tank and they weren't getting shoes on. Lo and behold, little did I know their parents were picking them up. And so their parents picked them up. My dad elected to not pick me up. He was real strict. It was the point where if you went, you're gone.
Right.
And so he allowed me to stay. I ended up staying in juvenile hall. My dad actually went as far as to say, we're not, I ended up going to court and they said, well, let's go ahead and release him. He wasn't, the lady who we went into her house or whatever, she ended up, liking me and everything. And she had ended up going to court and saying, she wanted me to be released as well. And so they were ready to release me. But since I was 14, I was 14 years old. And so instead of them releasing me, my dad ended up just saying, wanted me to stay in there. And so he wouldn't take me back into the house. So like when I went to court that day, just to give you an idea, when I went to court that day and I got into the courtroom, I'm scared and everything. I'm wearing a jumpsuit. I'm just a kid. And so all of a sudden my dad all of a sudden says, they go in and the public defender comes back to me and says, hey, we talked to your father. He was the one in court. My mom didn't even go to court. It was the dad that was sitting in there. When they pulled me into the courtroom, I looked over to the area where the bench was and my dad was sitting in there. And so they go, hey, the public defender comes back and goes, hey, I'm going to go talk to your dad real quick. He goes and talks to him, comes back and he says, hey, I'm sorry to tell you, but your dad doesn't want you back at the house. And so I was like, well, okay, well, what does that mean? I mean, I don't really have what do I do then? And then he's all, well, we're going to have to set this for another hearing. I ended up going back to another hearing. They ended up saying, now you're being a ward of the state because your parents don't want you back. You can either go to a placement or a group home.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did you give them problems prior to this?
I mean, I took my dad's, I was a bad kid. I took my dad's golf clubs and I would set them up in the grass and I was knocking golf balls around. I broke a couple windows out in the neighborhood houses. I was ditching a lot. I was just a bad kid.
So your dad was just like, I'm done with it.
Well, my dad was also very strict in the sense of even if you were a good kid and you went to jail, none of my family had ever been to jail. So they just weren't, he just really believed in that punishment. Like in other words, you're not coming back home.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remember my dad had told me one time, he's like, if you go to jail, he said, don't call me. You don't want me to pick you up.
Yeah.
Like you'd be better off not calling. And I was like, lucky I never went to jail, at that point. So when I was a little kid, but that kind of terrified me a little bit. So
Yeah, so they just left me in there, and I went back to court while I was back in the juvenile hall area in something called Group 3 in Riverside Juvenile Hall. And so Group 3 was for kids 15 and under. 15 all the way down to like 12, and then 12 and under was Group 4. And so I was in Group 3. I went back. They said, hey, some of the guys that had already done time and had been through the system were like, you can go to a boot camp for 6 months instead of doing a placement. And it's called Twin Pines. It's in Idlewild. They'll come and interview. You can get that knocked out, and then you'll be able to get out. And so I was like, oh, that's going to be a lot better than doing a year. So when I went back to court, they said, hey, man, we want to put you in a placement or a group home. That would have probably been better. But me, I was like, I want to get out of here quick. And so I told the public defender, I said, what do you think about this Twin Pines boot camp? And he's like, well, that's usually like a last resort or whatever that they send you to before youth authority. And I was like, well, it's only in 6 months. I'd rather go to that one. And so he goes, all right, cool. Well, we could send you to the Twin Pines if you really want to go there, but it's like a last resort to, and I said, I don't care what it is. And so he's all, okay, we'll have some, we'll see if the judge says yes. They went in, asked the judge said, no problem. So then all of a sudden I went back to Riverside Juvenile Hall. When I sat in Riverside Juvenile Hall, all of a sudden one day they called me for a visit, and I'm like, oh, visit. So I went out, and there was these like people in military uniforms there, just boot camp uniforms. And I assume 2 of them were inmates and one of them must have been a cop. And they bring 2 like snitch inmates to come over and sit and, like, oh, you going to run away? How are you going to do the program? And so, really, I thought I was going to do the program. So I was like, oh no, I'll be there and everything. And it's no problem. And so they said, oh, okay, cool. We'll let you know if you've been accepted. So like a week later, I got an acceptance letter to Twin Pines, and then I rode a bus and got shipped out over to the boot camp.
okay, did you? What? How was it? Was it harsh? I mean, was it?
I got shipped over to the boot camp, and I went on a bus, and I was with a bunch of gang members. Me not being from a gang, I didn't even, you know what I mean? Living in Southern California, I get over to this boot camp, and God, dude, they literally, like, I was lazy back then, and they woke me up and they're like, oh yeah, you got to run 3 miles in the morning. You got to do this and that. Back then I wore real baggy clothes. And so I looked like an idiot. And so they put you in real tight clothes. So that was another thing I noticed when I got there. I was like, oh man, here, throw me a pair of 2X pants or whatever. And they're like, nah, you're in mediums. And so I was like, oh my God, I didn't like the way it looked. California in the 90s, you were wearing humongous clothes. You looked like a rodeo clown.
Yeah.
And so now I got there, and I did not like it. I realized I was 125 pounds. I realized those guys looked like grown ass men. I started getting into a lot of fights, winning none of them at that time. And so there was a guy from California from 18th Street that I had. So when I was in Riverside Juvenile Hall, I ran across the first person from LA, and I noticed how elite they were. I noticed, they were a whole different demographic of gang member. So I was kind of like, oh, wow, these guys are real hardcore compared to Moreno Valley, or, you know what I mean? And so when I had got there, there was a guy from 18th Street there. I didn't know that I was living in the Inland Empire because, like I said, I wasn't from a gang, but come to find out, Inland Empire hates LA. And so it's like on site. And so that guy from LA was over there having a lot of trouble, but he was a hardcore dude. He was getting jumped. And so I started getting into a lot of fights, and it wasn't going good. I met some guy from CVL, Corona Vatos Locos, some big old dude, Crown Town, ended up talking to him. He said, if you wanted to, you can escape from here. And I was like, oh, wow. And he goes, yeah. He goes, you can take one of the staff vehicles. I can show you where the keys are. You can. And I said, no crimes. Because back then I was still at nothing. And I said, no crimes. I said, how do I show me the route to get out of here? And then he wrote down like a little route where you could travel down the mountain and this and that. Well, that dude Gutierrez had a fight in the football field and got jumped. He's an 18th streeter. So I ended up befriending him, and I said, hey man, what's up? And he's all, no, nothing much. And so I said, hey, we started talking, and I said, hey, what do you think about just dipping from here? And he goes, yeah, I'm down. And I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah, both of you are having a fucking horrible time.
Having a horrible time. He was having a horrible time. He was probably an elite dude. I was having a horrible time. I wasn't in the gang mix at the time. And so we decided, I told him, well, let's go. And I said, hey, I talked to this homie from Corona, and he gave us the route to go. Well, that dude said, yeah, I'm down. And I said, okay, well, then we'll just leave tonight. And so all of a sudden, like, they take you to like a chow hall. And they like everyone has to like stand up at their bunks, put their hands behind their back, and then you fall in line like like if you're in this row of bunks, all of us are standing here, and then we turn at the same time, and then we march out and go to the chow hall. Well, when they all marched out and went to the chow hall, me and that dude hid under our bunks. And so just stayed under our bunks, real quiet. And then all of a sudden, everybody left. And I'm just laying under my bunk real quietly and like not wanting to say a word. And then I can hear a pin drop. And so I slightly slide outside of the bunk and I say, hey, brother, I said, hey, everyone's gone. And then it was like, oh shit, do we do this or do we just go to chow? And I was like, nah, let's go. And so we left. And what happened was we just started going down this trail that this guy rode us because he had been part of a road crew. So they had been known how to get out of the mountain. And so we just started going down the mountain on a trail. And all of a sudden it was like an hour and a half. And then all of a sudden we see lights, cop cars and everything. They must be looking for us. If anybody knows Idlewild or Banning in California, it's dense wilderness. So I'm saying there was no way you were going to see us, catch us or do anything. We left that whole night. It took us about, God, we walked and jogged and ran for about 6 hours. And then it started getting so pitch black. I had never seen pitch blackness like this before. It almost felt like we were in Africa. I mean, you could see the moon looked 100 times its size. And so all of a sudden, it's so dark, we really can't go anymore. I have a Big Ben jacket on and I have my visiting pants on, you know, those ugly size medium. And so I had all that stuff on. Me and that dude literally it was so freezing that night, had to conjoin Big Ben jackets and kind of huddle up and breathe on each other. It was that messed up, dude. It was freezing. I literally at that point didn't want to escape anymore. I was like, oh no, I want to go back. I was like, I'd rather even just go back and face it. And I don't think we're going to make it down the hill, dog. I don't know how we're going to get down. And so all of a sudden we spend the night there in the freezing cold.
If you sleep hot at night, you know how disruptive that can be. Whether you're having trouble falling asleep, you're waking up sweating in the middle of the night, or all of the above. That's where Ghost Bed can help. As the makers of the coolest beds in the world, Ghost Bed is your go-to for cooling mattresses, cooling pillows, and cooling bedding. From their signature Ghost Ice fabric to patented technology that adjusts to your body's temperature, every Ghost Bed mattress is designed with cooling in mind. So whether you want a plusher mattress that cushions your shoulders and hips, or a firm option with exceptional support, your Ghost Bed will keep you cool and comfortable all night long. When you purchase a Ghost Bed mattress, your comfort is guaranteed. You can try out your mattress for 101 nights, risk-free, to make sure it's the right fit for you. Plus, they offer free shipping, and most items are shipped within 24 hours. If you're not sure which Ghost Bed is right for you, check out their mattress quiz. You'll answer a few questions and get a personalized recommendation. Even better, our listeners can get 50% off site-wide for a limited time. Just visit ghostbed.com/Cox and use the code COX at checkout. Again, that's ghostbed.com/Cox with the code COX at the checkout to save a whopping 50% off site-wide.
By this time, I'm so thirsty, dude.
You didn't think this out very well.
And it was dark at night. So all of a sudden we realized we're only 10 minutes away from the camp.
Right.
So we were so thirsty, we really trucked it back to the camp. This is embarrassing. And we went and there was a little water hose and we ran across and we drank as much water as we could out of the hose. And then we went back and then we made it down that hill. And as soon as we made it down that hill, we were in pants and a Big Ben jacket. As soon as I came up to the freeway marker, it had a sign with a guy going like that. And it said, do not pick up hitchhikers. So I'm really good at spinning off a story and everything. And I'm good of, able to kind of get your way. And so I was telling him, leave it all up to me. You know what I mean? Just because I can talk better, I look better. I don't have any tattoos at the time. And so it was like, he followed me. We went right across the street. I knocked on some dude's door that I had no clue who he was. I'm actually 15 now at the time. And I knocked on that dude's door and some guy answered and he's all like, and he goes, hey, what's up? And I said, hey, you know what? Some chick just kicked us out of the car and left us. And we got into a big old argument where we're stranded here. We're actually from Moreno Valley. We were headed up to the mountain and he's kind of like, this and that. And I said, hey, if you can give us a ride, I can give you a couple $100. I had not a dollar to my name. we're going to jump him. Look, dude, I already thought in the car, it's like, I already told the homie that I was with, I nudged him and said, hey, as soon as we get towards mom, we'll handle that. And then we'll get out of the, and there's no money. But that didn't have to happen. When we got to a certain point in Moreno Valley, we just kind of hopped out on him and he wasn't going to do anything. We took off. I went to my buddy buddy's house, childhood friend or whatever, ended up calling my mom and saying, "Hey, I'm out." Someone told me that if you left New Mexico and you made it till you were 18, that you wouldn't be able to, nothing they can do. And I heard that was true. Yeah. And so my obligation was to go to New Mexico and get away from California, wait till I was 18, and then it's gone. And so I called my mom. My mom said, "Yeah, oh my God, I love you. I miss you. I'll get you a bus ticket, this and that. I don't know what to do." She's confused because they're not criminals. And so all of a sudden, she told my dad, you know what I mean? Being the woman and everything, she told my father. My father called the police, and police showed up to my buddy Tim's house, came and arrested me. And actually, when the police had came, I was going to run. And then at this point, I just said, I really care about this family that's here like a lot. They've done a lot for me. They're the ones answering my calls from juvenile hall and everything. So I just got arrested or whatever, and they took me back to the juvenile hall. So I got stuck back over there.
Back to the boot camp?
No, back to juvenile hall.
Okay.
So once you left from the boot camp, now you're done with the boot camp. You got to go back to Riverside Juvenile Hall. So I went back there. Lo and behold, again, here goes another. I stayed there about 6 months again. And then they get me into this other program. It's a placement this time. And it's called, the judge says, "Oh, we'll give you one more chance." Usually if you escape from Twin Pines, you're going to California Youth Authority for sure. And so I did that. And then
but you also said that was like a last resort too.
It's a last resort, so but since I was on my first chance, I picked the wrong places to go to. So they probably took that into consideration, and they're like, he could, you know what I mean? Let's send him to Orange County, and we'll send him to Los Pinos. It's a placement in Orange County. And so again, I didn't know any of this was going to happen. I get to Orange County. I'm getting a little bit tougher by this time. And so I'm fighting back a little bit more. I'm starting to have confidence in myself. I get over to this Orange County place, and they start calling me River Rat. And I'm like, what? Like, what's up with that? And they're like, "Oh, well, that Vato's from Riverside." They're like, "He's a river rat. This is Orange County." And I didn't know there was a beef between Orange County and Riverside. And so I'm stuck over here as this Riverside inmate sitting in this Orange County jail. So I fought 100,000 times. And even the staff all got to know me. They'd switch me to another cottage. I'd get into a bunch of fights. And then all of a sudden, this awesome guy, Gunny, who was running that establishment, they call me in again to get in trouble. I got into another fight. I go in there and I'm thinking, it's just going to be, another misconduct thing, and I'll be sticking around. It's not going to be the end of the world. I go into this to talk to the guy in the office, and he goes and he says, "Hey man, there's a bag sitting over in the corner, and it says Baca, Thomas, and it has a number on there." And I'm like, "Am I getting transported for some reason?" And then so I said, "Hey man, what's up, Gunny?" And he goes, "The Riverside's coming to get you." And I said, "Nah, dude." I said, "Come on, man." Like, I was like, "Why?" And he's all, I can't. It's just too many altercations. They're coming to get you." And so I was like, "Oh man," I knew that it was all bad from there. By this time, I was already engaging on the age of 17. And so I'd spent that much.
You've been in there the whole time?
I was 14, turning 15. I turned 15. I went to Twin Pines, stayed there for a while, escaped, went back, stayed in the juvenile hall for that long. Turning 17 now, went to the other camp. Now I'm 17, gonna be 18 in a short period of time. Riverside comes, picks me up. They take me back to the county jail. And when they take me back to back to the juvenile hall, when they take me back there, I'm like, I know that I'm in trouble for sure. There's nowhere else that they're going to be able to send me. So all of a sudden, I go back to the juvenile, wait there forever, end up going back to court, go into the courtroom. There's some big, huge cholo. I'll never forget this. Guy had 3 tails on the back of his head. The guy was this, that, whatever. Get in there, and big old dude. I'm just trying to kind of hunker up next to him and see what he's about. And I'm like, "Hey, what's going on with you?" And he goes, "Nah, he's all, I'm going to go to prison." And I was like, "Damn." I was like, and then he's all, "YA?" And he's all, "Nah, Holmes, they're letting you, you can sign a waiver now, and you can, they'll put you in the adult system as a juvenile. And cause YA, you can get stuck there till you're 21 or 25. So again, I made a very poor decision. I was like, I thought in my mind, I said, "Oh, I can be out in 6 months to a year. Let me just go ahead and, go ahead and go to this prison thing as a juvenile. I won't have an adult record." I was like, I'll go ahead and do that. Cause I knew with the way I was going to get into trouble in YA, and I'd be stuck there till I was 21. If you ever go look up California Youth Authority, they have adults in there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They can hold you to your 25 even. It's under the juvenile shit. And so I made a poor decision. Again, the public defender came in and I said, hey, man, he goes, hey, they're shooting for California Youth Authority. There's really no way around it. Let's just see if we can get you, a real light sentence over there. You really shouldn't be in there in the first place. And, you kind of built this up yourself, escaping and doing everything else. You really were, you would have never been there. And so all of a sudden I'm sitting there and that cholo tells me about his going to the adult system. And then so the lawyer, I was so scared of YA. I was like, cause they said that place is crazy. I knew it was like, you get when you get there, all these crazy stories that I heard. And so I was like, I don't want to go there. And I ended up telling that homie, I said, hey, I told the public defender, I said, hey, well, this other guy that's out here that was just out there had mentioned that you can go to like Banning Correctional Facility or one of those adult places and you can just get like 6 months, get the time and there is no more extra time. Like, in other words, it won't depend on your behavior. They have to let you out. It's like New Mexico State Prison. You can do whatever you want and you're going home. When that date comes up, you're gone. Unless you've killed someone.
Yeah, but you're 120, you're a 17-year-old who's 120 pounds. I mean, you know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to, like, I would think it would still be a bad, well, you got nothing but bad decisions.
God, you could have imagined when I got there. This is where it gets unreal, like literally. And I am that tiny, I mean, look at me now. So, I mean, you could look at pictures from back then. You're a skinny kid with big ears. And so all of a sudden, you thought you were going to hunker next to that cholo. He's, because I went and got the deal and they said, oh, yeah, you can go to Banning Correctional Facility. We'll send you there for, well, they didn't say Banning Correctional Facility. They said you'll go to the adult system and you'll do 6 months. And so all of a sudden I'm like hunkering next to that other dude. And I said, hey, Holmes, I'm going with you and everything. And then, so he didn't really care. He was like, you know what I mean? He was already, so look, we get all of a sudden a transport picks me up one day. They put you in a white paper suit with no underwear on. You're naked. Like, I didn't know what this was. I'm a kid and I'm still 17. I turned 18 that day. My 18th birthday, the Riverside County Sheriff showed up and were there with these bigger chains. They weren't the tiny little juvenile hall shackles. They were their big chains and they showed up. They weren't nice. They weren't counselors. They weren't. And so they're like, they did a transport of juvenile inmates that they took to the adult facility. They took me to Riverside County Jail, I guess, made me an ID. They started sticking all of these other inmates into their gang module pods or whatever. In New Mexico, they don't have that. So in California, I guess at that time in the 90s, it was 95 when this exact situation was happening. It was 95 already by then because I left in 96. And so in 95, they would take them into Riverside County Jail and these individuals that were from a gang like Eastside Riverside, Casablanca, where 18th Street, wherever you were from, you would have a module of a gang pod. And so you're already sheltered by your homies and everything else. For me being from nowhere, they threw you in any pod. Dude, I ended up in going into some room. I got into a fight with some black dude. And then all of a sudden some Chicanos came to like the rescue and they were like, hey, you're coming in this room and you're not, this and that. So I went in the room with them and all of a sudden over the intercom, they're like, Thomas Baca, pack your stuff. I'd only been there like 3 days. And I'm like, oh, I'm going home. They finally realized I don't belong here at all. I was like, I'm going home, dude. I was like, later, guys. I start packing up all my shit. I'm almost throwing fingers on the way out. And then all of a sudden, I get into this transport and they're saying, you guys are going to Banning Correctional Facility. And I was like, dude, or what? It was unreal. But, then I get to Banning Correctional Facility and, it was all bad from there, dude. It was the worst place that I had ever seen. I wish I was in California Youth Authority. When I had got there to see a 45-year-old man naked in the shower shooting H blew my mind. And that part was where I was like, oh, this is atrocious. It was like, and then when I had got there, honestly, like this is where I really picked up a bad attitude and everything. And it kind of on my roller coaster ride to success, I had went in there and there was some dude from Corona Vatos Locos, some big old dude, ended up being a nobody, a piece of shit as far as I'm concerned. Now that I look at it now, I was on a bottom bunk that they'd put me on. He wanted the bottom bunk. He came over, tried to assault me or whatever. I fought back, but not enough. There was some big Sureño in the pod that ended up being, made. He ended up, being from that Black Hand. And he ended up coming over to me and saying, hey, did you just have, what went on with that dude? And so, you know, I told him nothing because I was taught in juvenile hall, you say nothing about nothing. Anything could happen. The answer is nothing happened. And so I kept telling him nothing. And he goes, hey, you need to tell me what happened. And I said, nah, we got into an altercation then. And so all of a sudden he took that dude in the shower and beat the shit out of that dude. And then he came back and told me, hey, go in the shower and go ahead and throw down. And so that was my first introduction to learning that I had to get into a fist fight and it was going to be on call. And that guy had so much stigma and power to him that I just went ahead and did that. And I went in there, fought him, got beat up, came back out. I was like, and felt good. Got my bottom bunk, sat there. That night, I had no clue what table to go to. You know, in retrospect, I guess you were a gosto. I mean, really to think about it, you know, as I am now, it's like you were really on that low level. Well, that dude comes over.
You were a what? What'd you say?
You just weren't really anything. You know what I mean? The terminology of gosto is just someone who ain't really shit. You know what I mean? And I am elite, but I'm saying at that time frame, it's you were 17, you were just turned 18. You're barely being indoctrinated. That dude comes back over to my bunk and tells me to bring my tray over to the table. I start eating over there. I start becoming really great friends with him. We worked out 3 times a day. He was in charge of, you know, the whole car. We started working out. And then my kickout date came. And I really, honestly, oddly enough, didn't want to go home. You got to imagine I was 18. I was a kid. I really felt like this guy he was in his mid 30s. So it's like he was a father figure, almost like a mentor. And so I was like, I didn't really want to roll. I was like, where's he going? I'll just, you know what I mean? I'd rather roll with you. But, you know, your kickout date came and my dad flew from New Mexico, got on a plane, went to the airport, picked me up, brought me out to New Mexico. And that was how I ended up in New Mexico. That was the juvenile sentence that ended. And then I get to New Mexico finally. So when I arrived in New Mexico, and I had got to New Mexico for the first time other than just going there for family reunions, me and my dad had a falling out. I think I just became a little bit older. I wasn't feeling, the slapping or hitting or whatever. And I think he tried to yell at me and, you know, we never got physical, but, I ended up leaving the house. And so and it was weird for me because when I left the house in Albuquerque, New Mexico, I didn't really have anywhere to go. And I hadn't had any friends at that point in time. I mustered up a little job at a place called Keller's Farm Store and started working there, ended up getting into a place, and then really started going out and started meeting some people, and then started slightly getting into grass. And then once I got into that, I ended up going to a bowling alley. This was the first time that I got arrested in New Mexico. I ended up going to a bowling alley, You Can Bowl. I had grass on me. It was highly illegal at that time. And so I don't remember how it happened, but I remember there was a cop trying to flag me down or whatever. I ran from him, of course, ran across the street. He caught me, ended up having grass on me. And he took me into the county jail the first time. And this was in 1998, 2 years after I had moved to New Mexico.
Okay. I mean, did you bond out or?
I went into the county jail and again, I really didn't have much money then. I really wasn't, I didn't bond out. I stayed, they did credit time served and then they kicked me out. Remember, I had no support from the parents. So I didn't even have someone to sign for the bond at the time. And so they had let me out. When I was in that county jail, I met a connect.
Right.
And so, and when I got out, I utilized that connect to its fullest potential.
I was gonna say, it's funny when you go to jail. Like I felt like when I went to prison, I was like, all the problems that you can't figure out while you're there. Well, here's your whole group of guys that have the answers to them. It's like such a stupid place to throw somebody. So when you got out, you hooked up with the Connect, or did he just give you a number?
Nah, when I had went to jail, since I had started, when I went to jail, they liked the way I was in jail. They liked my attitude in jail. So the New Mexico guys, they're real solid. And so they gravitated towards me and I met a couple of good dudes, one of them being a great Connect. And when I got out, I hit him up and started using them.
And what was this for? Was this for grass?
Yeah, this was for grass.
Okay.
Large amounts of grass. This was for anything that I wanted to get, but since I had met a few people on the street already, I met some dealers. And so what I did was I turned those dealers over. And so since I had a connect that I met in there, I can start getting you pounds.
Right.
And so that's what I ended up doing.
What kind of money are you making?
I mean, look, not a whole lot. I would say just say you get a 10 pack, a 10 pack and you make 15,000 off the 10 pack. So maybe $15,000. You know what I mean?
Like a lot to me. That's like that's what, like a month?
That's about maybe in a month.
That seems like a lot to me. 15, for what are you now? 20, 21?
Yeah, 21.
Okay, for a 21-year-old kid, 15 grand a month. I mean, that's
you weren't making it consistently, but you were dropping off loads here and there.
Even if it was 100,000 a year, that's a lot of money for a kid. Because it's not like you're buying a Mercedes or something. You're buying a vehicle for $4 grand or 10 grand or something. I mean,
I bought a brand new Mustang back then.
Okay, well, see, that's you know what I'm saying. Like, I mean, that's you don't have car payments. Like, kids don't live. You probably just a regular apartment or something. Like 100 grand a year that's a lot of money.
Yeah,
to me, but it is in Florida.
Yeah,
it's $100,000 a year in Florida. Today's a lot of money.
I agree. Yeah.
And how long was this? This is 20 years ago, right?
This was in 98, 99, 2000, 2001. That whole era.
25 years ago.
Yeah. And so, that was probably decent money. You got to imagine. So like a pound of grass would be back then somewhere around as high as 2,800. You were getting it for 1,000. Right. I mean, you were getting it for $1,000. I mean, so, you were getting it for 1,500, 1,600, 1,800, depending on the quality of, the grass.
So how long does this go on, or does it does it escalate, or is this pretty much what you
I mean, this went on for quite some time. And Then I made a bad move. I got greedy. I robbed the drug dealer for about 30 of them.
How did that happen? Robbed them like with a gun, or you just didn't pay him?
We robbed him with a gun.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And so how this happened was it was just we just did it. We ended up kicking his door in, went in there with some masks, took everything, and ended up with all the stuff.
Did he know it was you? He had to know it was you.
I think he knew it was us, but there wasn't anything that, you know what I mean? It wasn't a fact. Not to mention, I mean, we were running the streets pretty hardcore back then. It wasn't like he was going to do anything about it. It's like, what are you going to do? You're going to come to the house, or, you know what I mean? We'll take care of it.
Right. So do you get caught? Like, are you rob the guy? What is that's your connect?
Yeah, and so I lost the connect. I made a very bad move. I'll be honest. One of my buddies picked up that connect and utilized him for a very long time, made millions. I was dumb. And so you robbed him. So then after that point, you were on that last bag of, you were on your last, just 15, 20 pounds. And so, getting rid of all that, doing this and that. Long story short, I end up getting robbed by some idiot. And this is where I pick up my case. I get robbed by some dude. He ends up robbing me for a bunch of stuff, a bunch of cash, robbed me from my safe. It was like 2 ounces of like $10,000 and a few pounds of grass. And he took that. I ended up catching this dude at a party.
Did you know who it was when he robbed you? Or did you just figure it out later?
So when they robbed me, they didn't do it to me. Like, me and some other homie lived at an apartment. So they came into our apartment and robbed us when we weren't there. So like when we came home, the safe was gone.
Okay.
And so like our house is broken into. And so I was like, oh yeah, someone got us. Well, little did we know, someone ended up telling us who that individual was. So we knew who did it. Okay. And so by just getting lucky, all of a sudden we're at a big party. This dude shows up to the party. And so, and again, I don't really know what he looks like. I've heard his name thrown around. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden, one of the guys at the party that I'm buddies with had said, hey, this homie's here. So, I had a pistol on me. That's where I picked up the aggravated battery, armed robbery, and kidnapping, proceeded to take care of it, destroyed him, $70,000 worth of facial damage. And yeah, and that's kind of how I got caught, because
I'm sorry. Did he see this coming? Did you just walk up and smash him, or did you give him an opportunity to give you your stuff back, or just
this was a big apartment, and there was probably about 40 people in that big apartment. So it was really packed. And so he was sitting on the couch, with some drugs on him and everything. And, everyone was doing things back then. And so he was sitting there, and once I found out, I left from my group and area, and I walked right over there and just took care of him, right then and there. just started to proceed to pistol whip him, unfortunately. And that it ended up escalating outside, broke him off. And that was.
How does the kidnapping charge?
Yeah.
Is it because you moved him or something?
So if you move anyone, anyone's able to look this up. If you move anyone 3 feet against their will during an assault or the commission of any kind of assault or crime, it's a kidnapping. So like false imprisonment would be me not allowing you to leave the room without me putting my hands on you. The moment I put my hands on you, that's a kidnapping.
Right.
And if you move more than 3 feet. So, I mean, like the 100 street fights I've been in were all kidnappings. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I picked up 100 kidnappings.
Right.
It was really an innocuous charge, to be honest with you.
It sounds serious.
Well, I mean, but read us. It is. It's 18 to 24 with no less than 12. But imagine how easy it is to pick up that case. If you and me got into a physical altercation, I promise you're moving 3 feet.
Yeah.
I promise I'm moving 3 feet. So I'm saying one of us is going to pick up a kidnapping and an aggravated battery.
Okay.
Kidnapping isn't tying him up and putting him in a car. I mean, I guess it could be that.
You see what I'm saying? That's what I like.
Well, when I first picked up the charge and I had went to the county jail and I saw, first they hit me with aggravated battery for assault with the deadly weapons with intent to commit a violent felony. This is all public information. Armed robbery, firearm enhancement for assault with the deadly weapons. They had false imprisonment, all kinds of stuff on there. They ended up indicting me on a kidnapping charge. And so I was like, whoa, this is a trip. And so when I went there, I was like, there's no way. What is the kidnapping? When I went to that law library and looked up the state statute on kidnapping, it's exactly what I did.
All right.
So I was like, oh my God, you're in some deep hot water. This is the armed robbery only held 9 years plus the 1 year firearm enhancement was 10 years. And then the kidnapping was 18 to 2. It ended up playing down to conspiracy to commit kidnapping, victim not freed in a safe place, in parentheses, whatever that means. And that was when it was the regular kidnapping, it was 18 to 24 with no less than 12. When it knocked down to the conspiracy to commit kidnapping, victim not freed in a safe place, and it ended up going down to a 9-year charge. And so nine for the armed robbery, 1 year for the firearm enhancement, which is 10 years, 9 years for the kidnapping when you got sentenced finally, and then 3 years for the aggravated assault, aggravated battery with great bodily harm or whatever.
Is that 22 years?
Yeah. And then they consolidated all of that into New Mexico does this. Look them up. They let everybody out. And so New Mexico ended up saying, okay, well, we'll give you a plea bargain. My first plea bargain was for like 20 years. My second plea bargain was like 15 years. And then the third plea bargain, they ended up, the third plea bargain I almost missed out on because I ended up getting into a riot. There was a big riot in our pods. They moved us to SEG. I didn't sign my plea bargain. So they actually sent me to trial. So I was like, oh my God, you're guilty. And so they sent, and now you're going to get the full time. So they sent me to trial. Well, at that first initial trial setting hearing, they offered one last plea. And it was a 1 to 10 with a 5-year cap. So instantly I signed it. I was going to sign the 15. But then all of a sudden when they did that, I was like, oh, I'm signing that quick. And so I signed for it and I got 10 years. 5 years in prison, 5 on probation, and 2 on parole.
How long have you been locked up at that point?
I had been locked up at that point for it took about 8 months to get sentenced or whatever in the county.
Okay. And then they send you to prison. How long do you have to wait? A month or two before you get sent to this is all state. So you get sent to like you get sent, don't you? I don't know how all states are, but don't you go to like a receiving station where they categorize you and then they shoot you off?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, so I spent 8 months in the county, got sentenced, took the time. I was in Echo 6, a high felony pod. I love that pod. And then I love that pod. I swear to God, shout out to Echo 6. And I said I wouldn't shout out. So the other thing is, I ended up going to prison. I went to the reception center, which was in Los Lunas. I have the gift of gab. So I ended up talking them into putting me in a level 2 in Los Lunas. Got to that level 2 in Los Lunas. And once I got to that level 2 in Los Lunas, I started picking up the Clippers. And I noticed they had a barber gig over there. I ended up getting into that barber gig. I ended up cutting hair over at the level 2.
What does that mean, a barber gig? Like a training program, or like where you actually get a license? Or
no, when the state prison's really impoverished. When I showed up to the state prison and got to RDC, they did all the classification. Then they sent me over to Los Lunas. And when I got there, you have to work. It's a level 2 is a working camp supposedly. So like if you don't want to work, they'll shoot you to a 3. And so I wasn't going to work. I refused to go in the kitchen when I first got there. And then they said, well, what do you do? And I said, barber. And he's all, well, we have a barber position if you want to go in the barber shop. So I ended up going into the barber shop, cutting hair. I was still a fool. I was bringing in all kinds of stuff. We were partying in there. I brewed a bunch of hooch one night. We got caught with it. They kicked me out, sent me to the hole. Me and my roommate ended up going back to that level 2 camp. They shot me to a separate camp to separate us or whatever. I went into Santa Fe, did the same thing, cut hair. But all of a sudden the staff wanted me to cut their hair. So I started becoming a staff barber. Some idiot took issue with that. I got into a fist fight over there in that level 2. That ended up removing me, and I ended up going to a level 3. And that was in Las Cruces.
Well, what was level 3 like?
The level 3 was real prison.
Right.
So like the level 2 is a joke. Like It was a joke beyond a joke. You got cops over there saying, get on your bunk, go sit down, go eat. It's weird. When I got to the 3, I was happy I was in the 3. And so the 3, there's lifers there, there's this and that. It's just more prison related. It was more mimicked my county jail. And ended up going through that level 3. This is the roller coaster that, it sucks. I don't want anyone to behave like I did. I stayed in that level 3, ended up getting into a big riot. There's a group called the S&M, and they're Sindicato Nuevo Mexico, and they're a prison gang. We ended up giving them the boot off of the yard. And so it was a big old riot. I ended up getting sent to the level 6 in Santa Fe from that riot. They gave me, I was one of the first in Cruces to do what's called the level system. And the level system just meant now you went to a level 6 facility. I did a year in the level 6. Once you did a year clear conduct in Supermax level 6, then they would move you to the level 5, which is still Supermax. You come out 5 hours a week. And so, and I did a year there. I did 1 year in 6, 1 year in 5. And then I went and did a year in level 4. A level 4 was hardcore, man. Level 6 was hardcore for sure. You had, look, I'll even give you a roster of a rundown. You had the guy who did the Hollywood video murders. You had a sergeant at arms for the S&M. I was in between him and a commander of the S. They both were already ready to kill me because of what we did in Cruces. So, I mean, they'd put me in, I got sent to the old death row unit just for the luck of the draw. So I went to 3A. I was in a cell called S109. I was in S-Pod 109. A lot of people will know that unit. And, no, I just sat there. I did all that time, went to the level 4. The level 4 now is a 6 with the doors open. So, I mean, you can't get to a level 4 unless you've went to a 6 or 5.
Okay.
Like they won't just shoot you to a 4. You have to almost go do the level system or go to a higher level to be able to get into the 4. And so the 4 now is, the 4 was a no hands policy. So meaning there's no physical altercation. You have older men on the yard that are gang leaders and they
like shot
have,
callers. Right?
Yeah, they have it set real simple. If you have any issue on that yard, which you shouldn't, go ahead and you take care of it like that. And
right, you come talk to us, and but you can't just handle it yourself.
No,
it causes a whole riot.
Yeah.
So how long were you there? Well, you've been going year to year to year, so you should be done. Aren't you done?
Well, I mean, so I got 5 years in prison, remember? So I went to Las Lunas. I spent a month there, just to give you on the time frame. I spent a month there in Las Lunas in the reception. And then as soon as you left the reception, it took about 3 weeks, about a month in the reception. And then I went straight over to the level 2. I spent about 8 months in that level 2. And then I went to the hole. And then I went to Santa Fe. I spent 8 months to a year in Santa Fe, maybe a year, maybe even a little bit longer. Then I got into that fight, went to the level 5 on pending transfer hold, not as a level 5 inmate at that time, just as a disciplinary, but in the level 5. So I got to slightly experience it. And then I spent about 90 days there until I got transported to the level 3 in Cruces. I spent about a year in Cruces and then got into that big, huge riot in Cruces, then went to the level 6 as an official level 6 inmate and then spent a year there. And then went to the 5 and spent a year. So I'm saying you got 3 years.
You're almost at 5 right now.
Yeah. Look, you spent, so I look at it like this. In Las Lunas, you got there in 2003. And you probably spent 6 months there. You probably spent 6 months in Santa Fe. So that was probably a year. And then you spent, a year in the other camps.
But they didn't have to let you out at 5. You had to do 5, but you could do more. You're losing gang time? Are you losing good time this whole time?
I spent 5 years, 8 months in prison, by the way. I spent 1,827 days, so I spent 8 months longer than my sentence.
And that was because of no?
No, not due to anything that I did. It was, they had a backlog of inmates at that time. It was super packed. You could look it up. They almost got sued for it. And a lot of people were getting out late. I was getting out on parole. It wasn't like I was getting out with nothing.
Right.
And you were eating your parole time while you were still in there.
Okay.
Because you remember I got sentenced to 1 to 10 with a 5-year cap, meaning it was supposed to only be 5 in prison. I spent 5 years, 8 months in prison, but that 8 months shaved off of the 5 years that I spent out on the street.
Yeah, there was some famous case in the feds where they kept a guy for an extra year or 18 months or something, just by accident, like they just missed it.
Oh, so you know what? Really, now that I'm remembering, why I stayed a little bit longer was when I had finally left all the 4 and everything, and I went to a regular level 3 yard. I went to a place called Hobbs, New Mexico, and I was supposed to get released in there. I was already ready to get released, and so in one night in Hobbs, they call a big, huge move list, and they're opening a new prison in Clayton, a notorious prison. And somehow I'm on the damn move list. I only got a month left, and I get on the move list. Well, when they moved me to Clayton, all of a sudden they tell me at Clayton, we have to be open 1 year before we could release any inmates. So now I have to go on a transport back to Hobbs to get released. So that's what made me stay there for 8 more months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you were released on parole, is parole basically like probation?
Well, I was released on probation and parole because the 5 years, you're only doing 2 years of parole. I had 5 years when I got out, minus the 8 months that you had done over this day, but 2 years of parole and then 3 more years of the probation. So I'm saying I was on concurrent with parole and probation at the same time. So in other words, when I first checked in, you still had that year and a half of parole. Since you ate into some of it, you still had a year and something on parole, but it was mixed in with the probation as well. Once you're done with the parole, then you would go to a different office and it would just be probation.
Okay. Well, I'm saying what's the difference? Well, I'm saying I understand that they're called different things, but I'm saying, is it basically the same thing? Or on parole, do you have an ankle monitor, or are they watching? Do you have harsher? I don't think we've had anybody that's on parole.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Most of it's probation. Is it harsher than being on paper?
Yeah, but it's better. I didn't want to leave parole. I graduated. I was doing great on parole, and the lady was super strict. You checked in 5 days a week. When you went down to regular probation, you only checked in once a month.
What's the difference?
The difference of what?
Between probation and parole?
The difference of probation and parole is, I guess parole, you're still in the custody of the Department of Corrections.
Okay.
So you could sneeze the wrong way and go back. On probation, they have to violate you.
Okay. It's like being kind of like that's how it is in the halfway house. Like, if you could do anything, they'd just be like, oh, they fill out a piece of paper and you're gone because you're still in BOP custody.
Yes, that's what parole is.
Right.
But that's exactly what parole is.
But if you're on paper, you can fuck up. And it's a whole process. And then they have to convince a judge to send you
and
back.
you go to a probation trial hearing, or in the parole, none of that. It's you get violated. They give you a hearing, but you're gone.
Yeah.
So it's like that. And so, that was.
Well, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, when you got out, what did you do for work? Did you go straight and did you become a barber and try and do the barber thing immediately? Or did you have to, did you get placed in a job, or how did you graduate?
Yeah. When I got out, my mother was nice enough to say, hey, you can come stay with me as a grown ass man. She lived in a place called Rio Rancho. Parole had to have a damn ankle bracelet, which I didn't know. And they said, you can't go to Rio Rancho because it's outside of your county. You must be in Bernalillo County, which is in Albuquerque. Okay. And so I had to go to a halfway house. And so I went to some bogus halfway house with a bunch of pieces of junk and sat around there, and they're all using drugs and they're all low-life losers. And so I was like, God, look, when I got out.
Don't hold back. Tell us how you really feel.
I feel like they suck. And so I felt like they were all losers. And so, and they were. And so was I. And so what I did was, at that point, I really understood and said, I do not, after this horrible stuff and all the stuff that I did, and I don't want to go back. And so I said, you know what, I'm going to get a job, man. And I went over to, my dad used to work at a grocery store. So I was like, I'll go to Smith's and see if I can get a job. Went in there. No. Armed robbery. No. I ended up dumbing it all the way. I call centers. I went all the way down to Taco Bell. Went in to apply. No. Went to Walmart. No, everyone's, oh, well, convicted felons, they get a tax break. They'll hire you at Walmart. They ain't hiring me. And so the answer was no. So one guy that was at that halfway house that happened to be somewhat smart, he said, hey, how come you don't go to school? And I was like, for what? And he's like, well, dude, you're going to get violated. You have 30 days to find employment. If you don't find employment in 30 days, you go back. And part of that employment is either half-time employment, half-time school, or full-time school or full-time employment. I decided to want to go full-time employment because I wanted to make money. I could not find a job. So I ended up going to C&M. I ended up going and getting an unsubsidized and subsidized loan. I ended up going into school. I stayed at C&M.
What's C&M?
C&M is a Central New Mexico Community College.
Okay.
Just a heel college. And I went there, I hung out there, I took a bunch of courses. I stayed there for 4 years. I stayed there for about 8 months to a year in school, getting a fitness tech degree. And when I stayed there, all of a sudden, I had done martial arts like since I was a kid, and I'd done a lot of martial arts on the street when I was running the streets. And so I was like, oh, cage fighting came up. So I was like, oh, I asked my PO, do you think I'd be able to take a fight? You know, I'm friends with a lot of guys in the UFC. And so I was like, and they're still buddies with me to this day. So, I mean, I get good training. I'm like, hey, if I take a fight, will that constitute as a job? And she says, oh, absolutely. And I said, well, I'd like to do halftime school then, and I want to go ahead and do halftime fighting. I moved into Greg Jackson's, one of the biggest martial arts camps in the world. John Jones goes there. All these guys go there. I ended up being the only one on parole living there in the dorms and waking up and fighting every morning. My last fight was in 2012 for King of the Cage.
Okay, so real quick, how are you paying for this? Like you said, you got a loan. Is this like student loan?
Student loan.
Are you getting Pell grants?
I got a Pell Grant, and then I got 2 student loans, one
Okay.
unsubsidized and one subsidized. So I
Okay.
got like 10,000 in student loans, and then I got, and I'm poor. Remember, at this point, all my stuff's been stripped from me. All the stuff that I owned, everything was gone.
But that'll pay the student loans. Well, you're not going to live like a fucking king, but it'll pay your bills.
I was in a halfway
Yeah.
house, man, paying $400 a month. It was cheap. So, I mean, I was really easy to live. And then and then when I moved over to Greg Jackson's, I got to stay there for free. And so, you know, I didn't pay any rent. I swept the mats, I cleaned up, I fought, I trained, I did all of that, and everything was going really good. And all of a sudden, one of the UFC guys had said, I was cutting all their hair in the gym, just continuously. And one of the guys was like, how come you don't get your barber license? And I kept thinking, dude, I don't want to be broke. I'm trying to go into the UFC like you guys so I can make some money. And that was my main thing. I tried to get on the season of The Ultimate Fighter, and a couple of the buddies from Albuquerque won that show. And I didn't get onto the show. So I started realizing, God, it's just not happening for me. And so I said, well, what's up with this barber journey? And so I was like, you know, and I said, yeah, it's probably, so I went and checked out a buddy that had a barber shop that some of the UFC fighters were going to at the time. They all ended up going to a big UFC event one weekend. And he says, hey man, can you stay back and cut some hair? And I said, well, sure, I would love to. I had the passion for cutting hair. I didn't even ever want to charge. I just wanted to cut your hair the whole time in prison. I love cutting hair. And so I stayed back. I cut hair. I made $300 that day. I thought it was 300,000.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you already love doing it, then how did you not put together that, hey, this is something I can make a decent I can make a legitimate legal limit, and they're not broke. You know what I'm saying? Like, no offense, but every time I've ever gone I feel like I'm getting fucking robbed. I mean, it's always like $25, $30, and it's like $30 and
I charge 55 plus tax in my shop right now, just to give you an idea.
Insane. It's
I
like
take home about $1,200 a day.
That's crazy.
Yeah. Just to give you an idea of what it is now. But back then, I was uneducated, man. I really looked at it and thought UFC, you know, the guys that I won't even mention, but, you know, the buddies that are in the UFC, and you know, I thought they made good money, and I was like, I want to be in the UFC. I thought 100,000 a year was a lot. I was an idiot.
I was gonna say the disparity between the guys that are training and the guys that are winning, you know what I'm saying, is huge. Like the guys that are training to be those guys make nothing. This is the guys that are winning. Like there's we talk about this. Like it's like being a comedian. Comedians are making $50 or $100 to go on stage. And they have to have a full-time day job to pay their rent. And then one day, boom, you're playing the arenas and you're making $200,000 every fucking show. But the difference is vast. So that's what I think of when I think of these guys. Like, it's like football players that they train and they bust their ass forever to go and play with. They make nothing to play, and then one day, boom, they're in the NFL.
Look at
and
this
they're
right
huge.
here.
Yeah.
I believed in myself.
Show the camera.
I believed in myself 100%. I believed in myself 100%. And that's why it was false belief at that point in time. Cause like you had said, but I believed in it heavily and I wanted to be in the UFC really bad. I never made it into the UFC. I'm glad that I did not make it into the UFC. I fought for King of the Cage was my last fight in 2012. And then that day I made $300 in that barber shop and it changed my mindset. I was like, God, you're living in a raft in the gym, cleaning the mats of UFC fighters. I was like, dude, I don't, you know what I mean? And when I made that money, I said, oh my God, I'm going to go get my barber license. I ran to the barber school, Albuquerque Barber College, ran over there and said, hey, how much is it? I want to get started immediately. They said it was $20,000. And that's when my heart sank again. I was like,
can you get a student loan?
I can't. You know what? So for barbering, for cosmetology, they did back then have, they had a student loan. They had financial aid for the cosmetology, but the barbering program, for some odd reason, zero financial aid. I'm like, how can they afford to get in the barbering program? But I'll teach everyone a little secret here, especially anyone that's in Albuquerque or anywhere else. There's a program called DVR. And all of a sudden, when I had remembered I was in county jail, there was a homie named Little Venom, and he said, "Hey, brother, you're a barber. Hey, you're sick, dog." He goes, "How come you don't go to DVR, brother? They'll pay for your license." And you hear jail stories all the time. I was like, whatever, dog. I was like, and got out and fought and did this and that. And then all of a sudden, I thought about it and said, Little Venom from the West, DVR. I was like, homie, I'm going to look that up. And I looked up DVR. Rehabilitational program. I looked them up and I was like, oh my God, this is a program. I right away filled out an application for the program, but then it said, you got to be disabled. And I was like, well, how can I be disabled? And I said, wow, PTSD, the medical marijuana card. Hey guys, I'm disabled now. Here's my disability. And so I got into the program. They said, hey, you pick a barber school. Well, it took me about 6 to 8 months to finally get accepted into the program, living on my last bit of money, having no money. And then DVR finally said, hey, you're accepted. Here's your acceptance letter. Go ahead and pick a school. Your next step will be to pick a school and then go ahead and bring us the information to that school and we'll cut your first check. They don't pay for it up front, but they do semesterly check funding. And so if you get straight A's or you're graduating grades, then you get to get funded. And so that was the first time I've been given anything. And I sat there and I got straight A's and I sat in that program for 10 months. I became a master barber out of that program. I went to a local barber shop that same day that I graduated the school. That same day I went to a barber shop and I was working there the following day. Nice. And so that next day I went in there and for 6 months I worked at that barber shop and I never knew anything about business. And I sat there and learned every single thing that woman did at that business, every single thing that I liked and that I didn't like. I took that and I compartmentalized it and I opened up Sir Men's Salon, the best barber shop in Albuquerque. And I opened up that barber shop and I opened it up with these guys are going to trip that come to Sir Men's Salon. I love all you guys. Shout out to you guys. I opened up that barber shop and had nothing in there. That's why I respect this so much. I had nothing. I put one chair in there. I had nothing in there. And it's grown into be a beautiful shop. I believed in myself so much that I threw the chair in there. I had 25 years of haircutting experience without a license.
Are you still in the same location or have you gone to a large?
I'm in the same location. I've been there for 6 years since I graduated barber school in 2018. I worked at the barbershop at that other place for 6 months. And then I opened up in 2019 into my shop and I've been open ever since.
Do you have other barbers?
I had another barber. I have other barbers that work there. I had one other barber in particular. She knows who she is. She's opened her own shop on the West Side. Shout out to her. And so now I've started a coaching program. I've started 2 programs, a coaching program to have barbers be able to open up their own shop. You can make a lot more money when you're your own boss. It's hard for me to sit back and, you know what I mean, and not indoctrinate him. So, you know, opening up your own shop is monumental.
You work a lot harder opening up your own shop too, right?
You work a lot harder. So for some people that may not, you know, fit into that category, then You can still look, I mentor and you can go booth rent somewhere and still make the same amount of money. You can't booth rent out of my place because I don't hoard out. Like I'm not about the money. You have to really be truly elite. And we could either do a percentage or, whatever until, that's how I do it now.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it makes me think that whenever you heard people, I want to open my own business. I don't want it. It's hard. You know what I'm saying? Like doing the taxes, keeping the books, because you're doing that. You're typically doing all that, and you're having to do. You're working 50 hours a week, and you're working another 30 hours a week, making sure all the the rent's paid, the electric, that everything's the licensing are up, the insurance is up. You're taking out payroll taxes. You're keeping up with your taxes, because if you don't keep up with your taxes, then at the end of the year you basically going through hell for 2 weeks trying to scrape together all your crap. Like it's a balancing act. So if you're not working 40, I sometimes think to myself, like, how fucking cool would it be to just have like a W-2 job where you're just going in, you're showing up at 9, you're leaving at 5, you don't have to worry. But
they don't have to worry, but along with what we do comes great reward. So it's kind of like I don't mind putting in the extra work, because I'm saying what we are able to do financially and everything now is much better. The tax thing I got really lucky on. My uncle was a CPA. He also did like APS, is our Albuquerque Public Systems school taxes. He used to be the superintendent of APS. So I'm saying as soon as I opened up the business, like to give you an idea too, my family, my uncle's like the first mayor of a small town, Chama, New Mexico. We have a real good family. And so when I opened up the business, I knew nothing about business, but I knew everything about cutting hair. But all I knew that is, hey, gross receipt sales, 4 different taxes. I had a CPA that, mentored me really good. And I started really learning taxes really well.
Yeah, that's where I am now. Colby's got somebody, don't you? He's got somebody.
My wife found
Tax strategist.
family friend.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought it was a
yeah.
family friend.
Yeah,
I was like,
yeah.
he just here, I had to go through hell before we finally found a CPA.
Yeah,
but
this is our second one.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, because I had someone that just didn't,
winging it.
not winging it, but
That's what I got.
Yeah,
I got somebody who's winging it right now. I've had somebody who's winging it for 5 years, bro. Like I'm just.
There's good CPAs and bad CPAs. A good CPA doesn't want you to pay taxes. A bad CPA wants you to pay taxes. There's something called a game. And when I play a game, I play to win, but I also play by the rules.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's all taxes is. It's a big old manipulation. You could turn your company into an S corp. Then you can just say you wanted to pay your wife. Now you can cut her a check and it's a tax write-off. You're projected to pay $50,000 this year in taxes. You could pay her a salary of, $45,000 and, wash the other $5,000.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was gonna say.
We had somebody that was overcharging us and didn't really know what was like. We had to correct his numbers. Like, hey, like these numbers are way off. Like you're saying our income is double. Like we should know this much. Like,
yeah, I basically had a bookkeeper she's kind of like, and then one time we went last year. Did I tell you this? We went to H&R Block because we were going to go ahead and have H&R Block file the taxes. Like we're going to give them the numbers, but we have them all. Gave them the numbers. The woman came back and was like, you're getting, or she's like, oh my gosh, you're getting a refund of $300,000. And I went,
wow.
I don't know whether it was 300 or 600. It was outrageous. Like there is no way.
I wouldn't take that.
No, of course. But I'm saying there's no way that this woman could possibly think that I'm getting 300,000 back. Like nobody's getting 300. I'm not. First of all, if I'm making $200 million a year, and maybe I'm getting it, and I overpaid, which you're not, and you're getting a check back. Like nobody's getting 300,000 back. Okay, that's not happening.
No.
You're paying in, and I'm like, what? And she's like, oh yeah, yes, you're getting 300,000 back. And I went, no. I'm paying in. I always pay in. First of all, I don't want 300,000 back. I don't want to go to jail.
Yeah,
I can't explain that to the judge. Secondly, I owe $6 million, so I don't ever get anything back. So I know even if that went through, I know they just take it, but it's irrelevant. I don't want it back because I know there's no possible way. And I'm sitting there, I'm arguing. She's like, oh no, it's right. I'm like, lady, there's no way that I made this much money and they're giving me back 3 or 4 times more than I made. And she's like, no, that's what and she started to argue with me. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to go to prison. This shit's going to send me to prison. And then the bookkeeper looked over everything and she was off by a little bit here and there. In 1 or 2 places, she had messed up the numbers.
Yeah.
And then it came back. It's like, oh no, you owe
Added 6
$3,500.
zeros.
I was like, thank God. Like I've never been so happy in my life to pay.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure.
And I pay quarterly. So it's like, but yeah, it takes a long, to figure out everything.
So when you say you pay quarterly, do you pay projected taxes? Is that what you're doing quarterly, or are you doing your gross receipts quarterly?
No, I just pay in a couple $1,000s every quarter, just so that I have something paid in, so that at the end of the year, when they say, hey, you owe 12 grand, you're like, I got paid in 8. I owe, 4 grand, like whatever. Like I don't want to be hit, So and also if you don't pay in quarterly, then
I pay monthly.
Oh, I pay quarterly.
Once you make a lot, they'll start making you pay monthly. I'm just saying you'll have to do that.
I'm not there.
Yeah,
I'm not there.
No, but you will be, and it's not nothing great. I mean, but you'll pay monthly. I pay mine every month. Mine's more than my mortgage.
Oh, well, you're also. Would you also have sale? Like I'm.
I have a store. I have hair product. I have $1,000 scissors.
Yeah,
I have
haircuts.
I have everything.
All your stuff, right? Like
this is all my stuff right here. This is Sir Men's Salon right here, guys. Everything. Yeah.
This one's too glittery.
Yeah, I don't like that one. That one's no good.
Well, how long have you been at that location?
I've been at my location for 6 years, from 2019 now till 2025.
Okay.
From January 14th of 2019 until now. Oh yeah, it's the 4th in 10 more days.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what happened during COVID?
During COVID, I became rich.
Oh.
I compartmentalized strategies, dude. I looked at it like this. When COVID came, it was time for daddy to become rich. Right. And so I looked at it like, when COVID comes, all these losers are going to drop off. But I looked at it really like this. When COVID came, you've had people that have been in barbershops for 25 years. When COVID came, we put us all on even playing field. So now we were all brand new. And so I really took advantage of that. I took advantage of it in the sense that I was the only one in Albuquerque doing like nothing but appointments. So I was already strategically set up for it. I was far ahead of the game. I also, my barbershop, I named it a men's salon. So I'm bridging the gap between traditional barbering and salon culture. Somewhere where a guy can come in and, have $1,000 shears, used on his hair. It's styling a little bit more, but also clippers on the side if he wants, full on scissor haircut if he wants, washing your hair out with a $100 1821 shampoo.
Are you able to talk about like some of the big names of people hair you cut, or?
Yeah, I can talk about them.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah.
I've cut John Jones with the UFC. I've cut Diego Nightmare Sanchez. You guys can all go to their Instagram profiles. I'm on, I've cut, let's see, who's there have I cut? I've cut John Jones, Diego Sanchez, Alistar Overeem, Chase Sherman. I've cut a ton of, and if I didn't mention your name, I've cut tons of UFC guys' hair, tons of BKFC fighters, Donald Sanchez with the BKFC. I've done all their hair. Diego Sanchez is one of the guys in our shop that's like he's stuck in our shop.
Now for fight night, are they going clean shaven? Most of the time?
Everybody has a beard now.
Yeah.
So for fight night, the guys are going with a beard.
Yeah. So for a normal barber, what's your biggest piece of advice to make more money?
For my normal barber, to make more money as a barber, my piece of advice would be do something that someone else isn't doing. So if everybody's closed on Sunday and Monday, like the barbers are, open on Sunday and Monday. That's one simple scenario. Also, make sure that you guys are charging the right amount. You know what I mean? Factor your taxes into that. You guys take time to enhance your craft. The better you are at your craft, the more money you make. So I'm saying the better you get at your craft, go start social media, go become famous on social media. The more you do to enhance yourself, the more you're going to make.
Yeah, it seems like everybody that's doing well now has some kind of an Instagram or YouTube or TikTok. Like they're combining it somehow.
I started at $18 a haircut in 2019. And guys, I'm at $55 plus tax. So it's kind of like, if you're getting into it and you want to start a shop or open up your own place, I highly recommend to have your pricing a little bit lower than it should be to catch the interest of the public. And then once they see how good you are, they're kind of sewn in. That's what I did. And so, knowing how good I was, I did that low price and I did that for an entire year. And then I went from 18 to 25, then I went from 25 to 35, then I went to 45, and now I'm at 55.
Do you think the result of the haircut or the personality cutting the haircut, which one do you think is more important? Because me personally, I found a barber, I like the cuts, and I go there now because I know him and I just talk to him.
It's the result of the cut, number one. It's a combination of the two. If you're an asshole, they're all gone. But if you are great at your craft, and let me give you another pointer, guys, show up early. If you guys look, I'm open 7 days a week. Monday through Friday, I open from 7 a.m. until 5 p.m. On Saturday, I'm open from 7 a.m. until 2 p.m. And on Sunday, I'm open from 7 to 1. And so, if I were you guys, I would show that dedication. Guys like to see the dedication. The haircut, to answer his question, has to be superior. So you should really focus on that. But if you're able to add in personality, then you're a winning factor. The more things you can add in, the greater you are. So if you have a great personality and you're also a great barber, then you're winning. But if you're a great barber and with not so much of a great personality, you're still winning, because at the end of the day, that haircut has to be elite. You're selling that haircut.
So for someone who's never been in prison or jail, like, how do they get haircuts in prison? Is there like a barbershop room? Is it kind of like a hustle that you just do on the side? Or is it like, here's the official jail clippers and you can do this for 1 hour a week or something?
That's a great question. There's everything. And so I worked in the barbershop. I was also what's called a staff barber. I cut the cops' hair. I'm friends with them. So like, just say Echo Pod will be on Tuesday for haircuts. So everybody in Echo Pod's going to get lined up and go get their haircuts. So they're going into a barbershop to get their haircut from me. I also run that prison barbershop. But before I got the prison barber job, I would take the straight razors and those little orange razors that they give, and I did haircuts in the pod. So, you can do that as well and start there.
Yeah, there's usually at least one guy or two guys that are in the
doing razor fades
in the unit that are doing, or they would have in the feds. They used to have the actual shavers, right? And so they're still around. They don't sell them anymore, at least not in the places I was.
Yeah, the Norocos.
But they still have. But guys still have them, and they're expensive. But these guys will use them. They'll go. You'll walk in the, or it depends on where you are. But if in the low, you'd walk in the bathroom, the guy would have his chair there, and you'd have
put a trash bag around his head.
Yeah.
How much is a haircut? What was it back then to pick your brain?
It was probably $4, $5.
And was that in the feds?
That was in the feds.
So the feds is more high end than the state for sure. And the feds was $4. We were about $2 at that time. Yeah. Just to give you an idea, like $2 though, at 50 cents an item back then. I do not know what the items go for today, but I'm saying like Nutty Bar, Honey Bun, they're 50 cents an item back then. That's 4 items. Back then, when you had nothing, that you're making off one haircut. I did a haircut in like 15, 20 minutes.
I was going to say, that's a lot of money.
So you're coming back with a bag of store at the end of the day.
Does every prisoner get the same haircut?
No, that is a myth. These prisoners want it all. Yeah. And so it's like these prisoners, there's no hard part, comb over, razor fade, double, triple hard part. It's like hookers are swearing that, they're going on a date that night. Yeah. So it's like, I'm bald, so I didn't, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, they want it all.
They would have the pictures up in the barber's shop at Coleman. They'd have like 4 pictures up that you could pick from, but nobody was going with any of those fucking photos.
Yeah, no.
Like they're all wanted something different.
They want something outlandish and crazy. And we don't use scissors in there. Guys ask, hey, TJ, you don't use scissors in there. How do you do the haircut? Just with clippers, man. You could get the top of the hair, pull it up, and cut it just like that, with the clippers. You shear over comb, guys. Shear over finger if there's no comb.
Can you trust a bald barber?
No. Hey, you know what, though? Geez, that is a good question. Can you trust a bald barber? God, I would almost look at it like in reality, I guess the barber doesn't have to have hair to be good at his craft.
Yeah.
But it's,
Yeah, the joke is he doesn't. You can't have the joke is you don't trust a bald barber because he doesn't respect your hair. Isn't that the joke? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard similar things like that. It's funny. It's like I'm looking up. Every now and then I'm looking at videos about hair transplants and things like that. And like some of these guys that are giving this advice are bald.
Yeah,
and that's what the comment section say. Like,
and I like that comment section because that's kind of an that's kind of an oxymoron. It's like you're bald and you're giving hair advice, but we can say yes, you're allowed to be bald and give hair advice because as long as you have a license or you read the book or you do know what you're speaking of, you're allowed to do that. But it'd be weird like a tattoo artist who has no tattoos.
Yeah, I was gonna say, or a skinny chef
lacking validity.
Yeah. Did you have any overwhelming feedback from any of your other interviews? in the comment section? Like as far as like people pointing out or saying certain things?
Hey man, all the guys in the comments could kiss my royal ass. And that's some real shit. I don't, you keep staying in the comments. I want to hear all that. And so, yeah, no, I've heard this and that in the comments. And look, my shop's right there in Albuquerque. I'm on Manal in Wyoming. You want to come by, dude, just come over. I don't see the comment section being a big thing. Yeah. You want to do it professionally, we can go to Jackson's, whatever you want.
And what are you posting on social media? Like if someone goes to Instagram, what are they going to see?
Thomas Baca Barber on Instagram, guys. And you're going to see haircuts. You're going to see me giving mentorship. You're going to see me talking about skills for success, talking about how to grow a business, and really a lot of haircutting on my channel. I have a YouTube channel that has 3 million views, and they're all Thomas Baca Barber. And on that one, I do just strictly haircuts. That's what they like. On my YouTube, on my Instagram, I'm a little bit more, with mentorship, haircuts, and a few other things mixed in. Some UFC fighters on there. You guys want to see the UFC fighters and see if it's real? Go look at their profile, and then they have pictures of me cutting their hair on theirs, and then also go to mine, and you can see it all.
What are your thoughts on Vic Blends? Have you seen that guy?
Yeah, my thoughts on Vic Blends is he's nothing, and he's also fake. Sorry, guys. I'm just telling the truth. Vic Blends isn't real. Vic Blends is, I just see it as, it's just not, it isn't, Vic Blends is cutting the president's hair. But he's not having real conversation. Vic Blends is, he's too polite. I want to have a real channel. I want you to see the real deal. I want to, you know what I mean? You get the president there, I'm going to act the same way as I act here.
I don't know. Who is that?
He's probably like...
He's real famous for sure.
He's real famous. He's probably 30 years old. He's probably my age. And
millions of views.
Yeah. He's cut famous people's hairs. But he's white guy. He's tatted. And he'll like be on the street cutting people's hair. Yeah,
but he's also... So look, you guys want to talk Vic Blends? He's also... You want to get real about it? He's the brother barber. So what about me, the Chicano barber? He cuts all the blacks hair. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm just saying he's a black barber. Look at him. Look at the way he talks. Look at where he's from. I'm different. So look for my videos.
What's the difference between white hair, black haircuts, white haircuts, black haircuts, and Hispanic or whatever? Because I remember one time I went to me and my buddies from college. I was on a football team, so 75% of my friends were all black in college, and we all went to the barbershop our first summer there, and it's a black barbershop. They all got fades or whatever they got, and then I sat in the chair and I told them, yeah, two on the sides and just blend in on the top. And the barber sat there and he's like, you know what? I don't feel comfortable. He's like, I can't do this for you. So what is the difference between all the different races haircuts?
The difference is the texture of the hair. So when you have straight hair and you cut into that straight hair, it will sit differently or it will react differently to the cut. If you have very curly hair, there's techniques to use to have it come out equally as elite. It's the texture in the hair that's different. A little story. I was the first black barber in the state of New Mexico in prison that was allowed to cut black hair, also allowed to cut the cops' hair. Chauncey Johnson, a black barber that was leaving, and Eugene Galloway ended up blessing me with the job. I was the one to go ahead and take that black crowd. I'm a big believer in, though, you should start off on black hair. If you start off on black hair, it'll strengthen every bit of haircut that you're going to ever do. So another little secret to the barbers out there, learn on black hair. And if you learn on black hair, you'll be a better barber.
First of all, I don't know where you're getting these questions. And secondly, I don't know. Where are you guys seeing these videos?
They like that stuff for some reason. Those questions that because it's like for some.
Yeah, these could like little
Vic Blends
clips.
is famous.
Yeah,
Vic
Blends.
Yeah, I'm not hip at all.
No,
I don't know anything. I don't know anybody.
And he's nothing to you because I'm saying he's not in your. Trust me. He ain't.
Well, I'm saying too. The other thing about like the haircuts, like I never get. The only videos I have of haircuts that have ever shown up on my thing is that there was a barber who was shaving this chick's hair who had cancer, and then he shaves his hair. Bro, I almost
that's a testimony to who you are.
Bro.
Now that you linked to me, they're going to start showing up. I wish I would have brought my clippers to cut your hair, and I brought my scissors, but those don't do any good. I spin them too. But I really wish I would have brought my clippers to give you a haircut. That would have been amazing to me.
Listen, I need a haircut. Like it's like I wait till
I wish I would have brought those.
Have to have a haircut before I go. I wait till
you got great hair, dude. I can see how your hair is. I would take about a 1/4 inch off the top. I'd have it nice and cleaned up. Keep the sideburns there. You can get a nice haircut. You got that high end hair. I can easily, dude. You would have been mind blown.
This is fake. This is from the back of my head. I've had 2 hair transplants.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
That looks great.
Yeah, I need one more.
Are you serious, dude?
Colby and I may be going to Turkey.
Yeah, we may be going to Turkey. So
I know someone that went to Turkey out of my shop.
How was the results?
Amazing. Like literally went, because he was really bald. And so when he came back with a little bit less than you, but it still looked phenomenal.
Does he still have his liver? Because I was told by Julian Dory, who has a channel called Julian Dory. He said, if you go to Turkey, he goes, you're going to end up getting kidnapped and somebody's going to take your fucking liver.
Oh my God. No, he still has his liver.
No. Okay, well, there you go. See? Julian,
he still has his liver. I'm telling you right now. He has the liver. It's not going to happen.
Cauliflower ear. So does that happen from one impact or just impact over time?
Cauliflower ear happens over a magnitude of years. And it's also called the medical term for it is polychondrial hematomen. It's when blood coagulates in between the skin and the cartilage. You have to be in 1,000 fights for that to happen.
But it's only in the one ear.
And so when you wrestle and just pretend that you're taking a shot, from the right side, you might get it more, your ear's leaning on your hip.
Right.
And so it comes from friction and also from a lot of contact. Yeah, a lot of guys will get it on one ear. A lot of guys will get it on 2 ears. A lot of guys will get it more on one ear. I still have some in here, but for the most part, a lot on here.
Hey, you guys, I appreciate you watching. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell so you get notified of videos like this. Also, go to Thomas Baca Barber, and we're going to leave you don't even have to do that. Just go in the description box, and we're going to leave all of his links. So you just click on it, go there, follow, and you can be able to get in touch with them through, I'm assuming, Instagram and whatever. And consider joining our Patreon. It's $10 a month. We put Patreon exclusive content on there. And I think that's pretty much it. I really appreciate you guys watching. Thank you very much. See ya.